partner with Compa Rusty?
Simon. You're looking at the top in the middle. Okay. We have our ID lights. Those are the three at the top in the middle, indicating a commercial vehicle.
So the 3 middle are the ID lights?
Yes.
Okay.
The 2 outside ones, those are marker lights.
Marker lights.
And they show the height and the width of the vehicle. All 5 are amber in color, not burnt out, properly secured, and not broken. Everything from the front looking back is going to be amber.
Okay.
Everything from the back looking forward is going to be red. Okay? So now, on the inside, we already did our windshield and we already did our wipers and our washer. So we don't have to do those now. Okay, but we do have to do the washer reservoir, which is under the cab on the passenger side.
Washer reservoir.
Yes.
Sorry, just repeat so I can hear it.
Okay. Washer reservoir is properly secured, filled to the proper level, it's not leaking, working properly. Okay. There's not a whole lot you got to say about it. It's not really one of the critical things. But we want to make sure everything is important. Okay. We have our hood. The hood opens and closes properly. The grill is not broken. It's in one piece. It is properly secured to prevent any objects from entering and damaging the radiator. Damn it. I can't even speak. This is a bad day. Okay, we have the amber color, running lights, turn signal, emergency flashers. We have the headlights, high and low beams, clearing color. Both are properly secured, not broken, working properly. Now, anytime you have the turn signal, you're also going to have the emergency flashers. They're both the same. Okay. So now we have the bumper. The bumper is properly secured, no missing hardware, no illegal welds. The license plate is properly secured. It is up to date. It's clean and visible under the truck. Okay. You should have no hanging belts, hoses, or cables. There should be no leaks. Look for puddles for signs of it.
No puddle, nothing.
The truck should be sitting level. If it's not sitting level, it would indicate a possible problem with the tires or suspension. Now we're going to be under the hood on the passenger side. Now, overall and in general, we have our belts, hoses, and cables. And this is, we just want to sort of go over it. The belts should not be ripped, torn, or frayed. This would be frayed right here. If you don't know if you can see it right there. That would be frayed.
Yep.
Okay. The belt should be ripped, torn, or frayed. They should have the proper amount of deflection. That means if you press in the middle of it, it's how far does it go in. It's basically the same as free play, but deflection is the proper term.
Okay, so deflection is for the hoses and cables?
No, just the belts.
No, just the belt.
Just the belts. Okay. Now we have our electrical cables. Our electrical cables should be properly secured with no missing or worn insulation. And that's the plastic or vinyl that's on the outside of these wires. That would be your insulation right here. Okay.
Okay, looking good.
Okay,
No
now
nothing.
our hoses. Our hoses are properly secured, not leaking, in good condition. That would be any of the hoses. That would be these here. It could be this hose. Any of the hoses should be properly secured, not leaking, good condition. Okay, that covers just overall and in general. Now we're going to go to specific parts. We have our coolant reservoir. It is properly secured, not leaking. It's always filled to the proper level. The cap and the lines are properly secured and not leaking. There's going to be a lot of properly secured, not leaking. Anything that contains, it could be oil, water, fluids, air, can be properly secured and not leaking. If it gets filled, like the power steering reservoir or the oil or the coolant reservoir, you always want to make sure that it's filled to the proper level. Okay, now, this is important. We got one thing that's belt driven, that's the alternator, and 3 things that are gear driven. You want to make sure you mention this because you get an extra point for mentioning these things. Okay. So that's 4 points you want to make sure that you get that's releasing. So we have our alternator. Our alternator, you see there? The alternator is properly secured. It is belt driven.
How do you know if it's belt driven?
Because the belt drives it right here.
Oh, what a dummy. Okay.
No, that's all right. That's a perfectly legitimate question. Because a lot of things, the other ones.
Alternator right here.
Yeah, that's an alternator.
And the belt is connected to it.
Right. Now you have the water pump, which is below, and usually there's a belt going to that. Okay, but it is gear driven, and that's a gear off the motor. Okay. So and that's the difference. So you have the alternator, which is belt driven. The belt should not be ripped, torn, or frayed. It should have no more than 3/4 of an inch deflection. So it should press in no more than 3/4 of an inch. Okay.
Nice and firm.
The alternator is properly secured. The electric cables are properly secured with no missing or worn insulation. The alternator is what provides all the electrical for the vehicle. So you always want to make sure you mention the electrical cables. And now we have the water pump, which is beneath and behind the alternator. The water pump is gear driven. It's right down there. I don't know if you can see it. You really can't hardly see it at all.
Yeah, it's pretty. Okay.
The
So
water pump is
somewhere in
gear driven. It is properly secured, not leaking, and the hoses are properly secured and not leaking. And that's all you have to say about that. That's it. That's it for this side.
nice.
There's not too many things you have to.
To the other side.
Now there's a lot of things over here. Okay. We have the radiator. The radiator is properly secured and not leaking. The hose is properly secured and not leaking. We have the compressor, governor, gear driven.
Which was the compressor?
There's a compressor, the governor,
Okay.
gear driven. Okay. It is properly secured, not leaking, and the lines are properly secured and not leaking. We have the dipstick. Okay, now it's sort of hidden back over here. The dipstick, make sure that the motor oil is always filled to the proper level. If you need to add any oil, you do so through this cap on top of the motor.
Cap right there on the motor. May you touch it again?
Yeah, right there.
Nice.
Okay. Now, we have our power steering pump. It is gear driven, and that's the last of the gear driven. You have the water pump, you have the compressor and governor, and you got the power steering pump. It is gear driven, properly secured, not leaking. The lines are properly secured and not leaking. We're going to do a lot of power steering system right now. We have the power steering reservoir. It is properly secured, not leaking, always filled to the proper level. The cap and the lines are properly secured and not leaking. We have the steering column. It's in one piece in good working condition. No more
So
than
pipe, correct?
yeah, no more than 2 inches of free play. Okay, so don't no more 2 inches. We have the steering coupling. It is in good working condition and always properly greased. We have the steering box. Okay, the steering box should not be broken. A lot of times they'll be broken right here. They'll weld all this together straight to the frame because it's easier to get back on the road. Okay, but it shouldn't be that way. So it's not broken, no illegal welds. It is properly secured, it's not leaking. The lines are properly secured and not leaking.
So it's okay for it to be kind of greasy and stuff? Just as long as it's not
Yeah.
leaking?
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, it wouldn't be that way, but right, as long as it's not leaking.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we have our steering linkage. That would be these pieces right here. We have our pitman arm, our drag link, and our steering arm. All right. We also have a castle nut right here, called castle because it looks like a castle, with the cotter pin. Okay. That's actually hardware. So we got the drag link, or the pitman arm, drag link, steering arm. Okay. Castle nut, cotter pin, not broken, no illegal welds, properly secured, no missing hardware. We have the we have the suspension. We have our spring mount, our mounting bolts, the leaf spring U-bolts, and shock absorber. Not broken, no illegal welds, properly secured, no missing hardware. There should be no missing or damaged leaf springs. The shock absorber should not be leaking. If it was, there'd be signs of hydraulic fluid.
Okay. So there's no hydraulic fluid on the shock absorbers.
Should not be showing.
This is called the leaf wing?
Leaf spring.
Leaf spring.
Right, and this is the spring mount. That's what the leaf
Spring mount, okay.
Right, and these are the mounting bolts that hold the spring mount. And these are U-bolts. They go over the leaf springs and then over the axle. Right, they're shaped like a U.
All right, you just slap them down.
Okay. Now we have our brake chamber. Now this is going to be important because you got brake chambers in the front here, in the back of the truck, and the trailer. You have the brake chamber, 90-degree slack adjuster with 1 inch of slack on the push rod. This is the push rod right here. It should only move 1 inch. Now, the ones in the back.
This whole thing's a push rod, or it's just
no? This is the middle part right there. That's the push rod right there.
Oh, so this whole thing that's moving.
This is the 90-degree slack adjuster.
Oh, 90-degree slack adjuster.
And this is the push rod right there. It should only move 1 inch.
All right, so it's this, or is it the actual thing?
It's the actual pin going in there.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, when you pull it back, you just sort of got to just. I know.
Okay, I see. So it's like almost like that little bolt screw thing right back there.
Right.
Okay.
And with his 90-degree slack adjuster, make sure that this is always at the same angle going in and out. Because if it was to, go off a little bit, it wouldn't have the proper air pressure. So, the back you're going to have dual chambers. This is a single chamber. Just think of this. A single brake chamber, a single tire. In the back you got dual tires, and you're going to have dual brake chambers. And it should, back in the back, it'll move 2 inches.
Okay.
But no more than 2 inches. Okay. So the front one's just 1 inch, all the other ones are 2 inch. So you got the brake chamber, 90-degree slack adjuster with 1 inch slack on the push rod. The brake chamber itself, right, okay, is not bent, cracked, or broken. It is properly secured and not leaking. Like I said, there's a lot of properly secured, not leaking. Okay. There should be no missing clamps. The clamps are properly secured and the lines are properly secured, not leaking. So on all of these, you're mentioning that they're properly secured, not leaking, and the hoses or lines are properly secured, not leaking. So other than that, you're just mentioning the clamps. So it's really not that hard, but in the beginning it seems a little overwhelming, but it's not that bad. Okay, now you might want to step over here to look at this. We have our drums. This is the brake drum right here. This big round thing goes all the way around. It's a brake drum. It should not be bent, cracked, or broken. Right here, this is the brake linings. These are shoes. Sometimes people just say pads, but it's really shoes. So you have the linings. Should be no less than a quarter of life remaining. Meaning,
I see
this is what wears on the brakes when you start seeing the brake dust and stuff.
Brake pads, brake shoes, brake pads, and linings.
Yeah, this is the lining. These are the shoes. Brake pads are when you have disc brakes.
Oh, so the shoes are the top piece, right?
Yes, that's the shoes.
The pads are actually this, and then the lining is the bottom line.
No, this is the lining right here.
Oh, the brake pads and the brake line are the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, well, pads are different.
Oh, shit.
Okay, you don't have to worry about pads.
Okay.
You brake shoes, and this is the lining. They're riveted right here onto the shoe. And what they do is when the wheel's turning, they press out like this, and that's what stops the vehicle from moving. It's by these pressing outward into this drum. Okay? So, you have the brake drum, not bent, cracked, or broken. The linings should have no less than a quarter of life remaining, meaning they should this big, it shouldn't wear down no less than a quarter of what it was. Okay, there should be no residue. This is important. There should be no black residue, meaning metal to metal grinding, meaning that they've worn down so much that the metal's rubbing. Okay, there should be no white residue, indicating a fire extinguisher might have been used. And there should be no greasy or oily residue that could lead to brake failure. So that's what you'd be looking for, residues either on the inside or the outside. Okay. Now we have our tires. The tires must be matching radials. Okay. They must have 430 seconds of tread life remaining. They cannot be recaps, meaning they cannot be regrooved or have another tread applied over them. You can in the back, that's fine, but not the steering ones. Okay, and these are 430 seconds of tread life remaining. The ones in the back, all the other ones are 230 seconds, but this here is 430 seconds. So once again, must be matching radials, must have 430 seconds of tread life remaining, cannot be recaps. The sidewalls should be in good condition, not leaking. Okay, they might say be more specific. Okay, no rips, cuts, bulges, gouges, not leaking, but basically good condition, not leaking. Okay, your air pressure should be between 80 to 100 psi, or whatever the manufacturer recommends. On this truck, it's 110 psi. Okay, that's between 80 to 100 normally. Okay, we would check the air pressure with a hand gauge at the valve stem. Okay, we would add air through the valve stem. The valve stem is properly secured, it's not leaking, and it's not touching the rim. The rim is not bent, cracked, or broken. It is properly secured with the lug nuts. No missing lug nuts. No sign of rust on the lug nuts, indicating they might be loose or worn. Okay, we have the cap and flexible seal, properly secured, not leaking. You would check and add oil through the flexible seal. This particular vehicle here, it takes oil. A lot of them takes the grease, but this one's oil. Okay, that's it for part A is the inspection. They're going to give you either part A or B, which B would be this part from the side to the back of the truck, and C would be the trailer. Every now and then they'll give somebody the whole thing.
So I can cut this video off?
Yeah, you can cut it off right now if you want.
All right. Part A complete.
Compa Rusty out.